Cool, we're good.
All right, everybody, this is Address the Sess. The mere fact that you have me here, I think, is an act of something that was nearly, mythical. I don't know how many of you follow me on Twitter and were able to see me documenting the most horrific travel day I have ever had in my life. I was out in the Washington, D.C. area and spent 15 hours trying to get home. But I'm here. I'm just kind of broken, and I'm tired. And so who knows what kind of babble will be coming out of my mouth in the course of this. And so in order to exploit my vulnerabilities as much as possible, we decided that we're going to make this a little bit more of a free form. Let's talk about anything. That way, the idea that I might trip myself up and just start speaking in tongues will be much, much higher and will definitely be of greater entertainment value for all of you. One other thing I think we should integrate into this is let's share some travel advice as well, because I have tons I can share with you. Here's my #1 travel tip: don't travel. Bear that in mind, and we can integrate that in with the game discussion. Think about your favorite airport game or something like that. But let's go ahead and get this thing going. Nick,
one last thing.
Hello, Nick.
Hey, hi. One last thing. We're trying to get as many new people in this time as possible. So if you've been lucky enough to get into one of the Hangouts before, we would really super appreciate it if you maybe hopped out of the Hangout and just watched it from YouTube to give some new folks a chance.
Yes, yes. We have had some repeat visitors. We're trying to get as many new people in as we're trying to kind of figure out the software and stuff like that. So yes, if you guys wouldn't mind, you're welcome to try again in a couple of weeks. But let's see if we can do as many new faces as we can for this Address the Sess. All right. Hey, let's try Chris Van Helsing.
All right, here's Chris.
Anybody with the last name of Van Helsing, well, that stands out to me. How are you doing, Chris? Well, I think
fingers crossed that we can hear him.
We can't hear you yet, Chris.
Chris, we start every episode this way, but make sure you've unmuted your mic, and then...
Fortunately, you're still muted. All right, well, let's try to move on. And but yeah, Chris, see if you can unmute yourself, and we'll see what we can do. Hey,
cool.
We got David Lopez over here, though.
All right,
you got a shot there, Nick?
David.
David.
Hi, David.
Hi.
Hey, we can hear you. How are you doing, man?
Fine, fine. Thank you.
Where are you reaching out from?
Right now, I'm on Providence, Rhode Island, but I live in Mexico City.
Awesome, awesome. Mexico City, one of the largest cities on planet Earth.
Yes.
Providence, Rhode Island, a very nice city,
yeah,
but significantly smaller. What's that transition like? You know, the hustle and bustle of Mexico City, and then, you know, I don't want to say provincial, but smaller tempo that you might be finding out there.
Oh, it's a culture shock. Yeah,
definitely.
But it's very pretty.
No, it's definitely pretty, and of course, Rhode Island was attempting to build themselves a small game industry, and the 38 Studios thing kind of went a little sideways for them. I know it's become a political hot potato. Hey, how much do you travel, David?
Well, recently I've been traveling a lot because, I came here to Rhode Island.
Right, obviously you did that, so.
Yeah, all the way there, and I'm traveling back to Mexico on Saturday. So.
All right. Well, I hope you make your plane on time and everything works out. I'll be thinking of you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you very much.
So enough about planes. What's up in your with all the gaming stuff like that? Anything on your mind?
Oh well. Since I've been traveling, I haven't been able to pay my consoles. I've been playing on my laptop and my PS Vita and 3DS. Mm-hmm. So I've been.
And what are you playing that you're liking?
I've been playing StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm.
Okay, that's a sensible game to play on a laptop or anywhere actually.
On Vita, I've been playing Guacamelee.
Oh yeah.
And I downloaded some this obscure JRPG for PSP called Fate Extra. Pretty underrated JRPG. Pretty cool. And,
all right, that's a recommendation.
Yeah, and on 3DS I've been playing Fire Emblem and the new Castlevania.
Well, nice. You have a nice. You're different than me. You seem to be able to put up with a lot of games simultaneously. I tend to get really focused that I can't play a game until I'm done with the game that I'm currently playing.
Oh well, I've been playing these games like in the space of 2 months. So.
Okay. Well, clearly you must have some other responsibilities that you need to be attending to. Hey,
Yes.
did you have any questions or anything like that?
Oh well, no, not really. I just like want to tell I'm a really big fan of you and of all your adventures.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you so much.
I remember I was there when you did your first GameSpot TV.
You saw GameSpot TV?
Yeah.
Okay, do you remember how we used to have like a silhouette of a chain link fence and there'd be like TVs with flames in them?
Yeah.
It was just kind of like we were somehow in some kind of alley offering, like reviews from an alley. It was I have no idea why we wanted to convey that thought. But well, David, it was good chatting. Please hang around for a little bit, see if we can get a discussion going. We might pop back, all right?
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Nick, let's see how Elliot Barker is.
All right, here's Elliot.
Elliot.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Elliot? Where are you joining from?
England, London.
England. Where in England?
Sort of Greater London area, a little town called Eastcote.
Okay, nice. I once lived in London when I was much younger, and I had hair. And if you look at my eyes, they were dewy with hope in the sense of the future. Now it's just kind of grayed over. How are things going out there?
Pretty good. We've actually got sunny for once.
Yeah, we have that in San Francisco today too, and it's very similar to England in that like it's sunny, like everyone runs to the pub and stands outside.
Yeah. And
just drinks a beer because the novelty of it just you can't get over it.
Yeah.
So you got a question?
Yeah, I was just thinking about. I don't know how it is over there. I know GameStop, I believe, is pretty infamous for charging a bit too much for games recently. Over here, it's this. Go ahead.
Are you talking about used games or retail games?
Either, I suppose. Okay. Over here, we've got Game.
Game, yeah. I've seen it.
And they do exactly the same thing. Right now, I mean, I can get, say, Injustice, Gods Among Us, for £40 in the store or £30 online. Do you think that if these retailers were, like, I mean, last year Game went into administration.
Yes, they did.
They nearly completely closed. Do you think if they were to lower their prices to match the online retailers, or even just, say, 32, 33, do you think they'd sell a hell of a lot more?
You know, that's an interesting question. I'm not aware of GameStop selling at retail higher than other retail outlets, but you're right. You know, a download price can be very different from what a retail price is, and that's why they're feeling a lot of that pressure, because you know, if you can save 10 quid on a game, you know, by buying it online, why not? I don't know if they're going to lower the price, because I think they're also purchasing the game for their inventory at a higher cost because of the physical disc, of the case, and of the transportation. And I think we're starting to see that shift where they're trying to push games that have a higher margin because it's collector's edition. You know, you're getting some kind of plastic statue, a booklet, maybe a commemorative frame that goes with, you know, Injustice, Gods Among Us. And I think they would not fix their financial situation by lowering the price, unless, and this could be something we can talk about today, I know there's a lot of people that like the act still of going into a store and buying a physical product. I think all of us, especially men, like to have collections of things. I think it gives us comfort. I don't know why, but I know it does. But I don't know if that tends to be a pretty hardcore group of people. And so I don't know if there's enough of us that would, you know, help underwrite their continued financial success. But that is, I mean, and game sells used games, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the profit margins are coming. You know, when you're buying used games, they don't seem to be all that much of a discount to, you know, the full retail game. But yeah, that's right. I forgot that game was going that way. And you guys don't have any other retailer?
Not really. I mean, we've got HMV, which also this year is also gone into administration. Been picked up by, I believe, Hilco, who saved the Canadian branches of HMV as well. And that's pretty much the only other major retailer.
I mean, it's been interesting to see what happens with retailers, because we are slowly moving more and more digital. Who knows what's going to happen with these two new consoles? And if you could buy every single game as a download. That's going to put a lot of pressure on them. I think it also means that they're going to have to rethink what that shopping experience is supposed to be.
Yeah.
I think we all know going into most like GameStops or games isn't like, wow, I can't wait to go in there. They're kind of cluttered. They're really cramped. I think we would start to look at places that are a little bit more elegant that you can browse, try out games. There might be something there, but you can't have it in any of those stores. All right, Elliot, thanks so much for joining. Stick around for a little bit. Let's see, maybe we'll have more. Actually, you know what? I want to pop back to David for a second. David?
Hey.
Hey, in Mexico, do you guys have GameStops? Do you have a lot of retailers that sell games? How does it work down there?
Yeah, recently, like, there's been like this one big chain of retail stores called Game Planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not associated with GameStop, but recently they've been starting to do these practices that GameStop has, like having pre-orders and reselling games. But for a while they didn't like, they just sold the games and that was it.
Do you think most gamers in Mexico are buying physical discs, or are they just trying to download games?
Oh yeah,
legally.
Like, physical distribution in Mexico is like a couple of steps behind.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people are not very used to buy things online over there, because not that much of the population is connected to the internet.
Right, having a high-speed connection where they could download something as big as a video game.
Yeah, high-speed connections are very like
pretty rare. It'll be interesting to see what happens. As if you start to answer some of the question, if like it really is like sort of internet connectivity forces that much more in terms of retail sales. That's really thanks for commenting. But Nick, I'm gonna throw in our next one. It's Gita or Gita. Gita. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Gita, like the Bhagavad Gita.
And where are you coming from?
I'm from Chicago. I'm
nice.
In Hyde Park, Kenwood. I live pretty close to the president.
I love Chicago.
Pretty awesome.
Unfortunately, ever since the Mortal Kombat guys, I guess ever since Midway kind of shut down, I've had fewer and fewer professional reasons to go to Chicago, which drives me crazy. So anyway, what's up? How are you doing?
I'm good. I just got back from my internship at this nonprofit art gallery, and today we were deinstalling the show of this guy Andrew Norm Wilson, who did this really interesting video I was watching at work called "Workers Leaving the Googleplex," which is he used to work for Google, and while he was there, he discovered that there were like two classes of workers. One had red name tags, and the other had yellow. And the yellow name tag people were the scan ops guys, and they have fewer privileges, fewer benefits. A lot of them are minorities and immigrants and undocumented workers. So he started interviewing them. Google fired him, of course. But he managed to keep a lot of his
but I'm not surprised.
He managed to keep a lot of his footage, though, especially workers leaving from the yellow card side and then contrasting it with the front entrance of the giant Googleplex. And then he also made a book, because the ScanX guys, they have these little finger condoms, and sometimes you get an imprint of their finger when they're scanning these pages. So he just made a book of every single page where you could see a finger of one of these guys that we don't know anything about. So
that's really and what was the name of the artist again?
Andrew Norman Wilson.
Andrew Norman Wilson. So I don't have a pen and paper, but other people write that down. That sounds really interesting.
It's on Vimeo. It's really cool.
Less serious than what you just described that was in this video installation. When I was at G4, and we kind of did more of a proper merging with NBC, and we got all these new kind of badges to go through doors. They did come out with a variety of colors with no explanation as to what color meant what. And it could have been completely arbitrary, I don't know. But especially because it was LA in the entertainment industry, the level of anxiety and panic that somehow you've been identified and you don't know how you've been identified run rampant among a lot of people who probably just needed to be identified as, person and nothing.
Yeah, no, you're a human being with a name.
So, I'm assuming you also play games. Anything on your mind lately in the world of video game stuff?
Well, yeah, I've been thinking a lot because I've heard this term more often now as sort of gamings are sort of reaching, game journals are sort of reaching this level where we need to have better academic discourse about them in order to analyze them correctly. And I keep hearing the phrase ludonarrative dissonance,
yes,
like everywhere I go, pretty much every day. Yes. And I just, I understand why that phrase exists and the purpose it serves, but I kind of think my friend Maddie Myers, who she used to write for the Phoenix and do some games journalism stuff, she put out that she doesn't really like it because it implies that there is a dissonance at all between the ludo and the narrative, and that in games there's never truly a merging of those two things. And I was just sort of wondering how you feel about that phrase, or if there is just basically no academic vocabulary for a lot of things in gaming. Yeah, I just think it's kind of interesting.
I was just having dinner with a bunch of people from a game company, and ludonarrative dissonance was much the topic of discussion. I come from a background where I really like critical theory, and one thing that I have so badly wanted to see more is to see academic programs. And that's one thing that I would clarify. I don't know of how much journalism I want to see move into high-level sort of academic critical theory, but there is definitely a dearth of critical theory as it applies to games, and especially mainstream games. You find papers on the economics of World of Warcraft or Journey or something like that, but looking at something like an Uncharted, something like Gears of War, something that has a lot of cultural relevance and kind of getting underneath the hood. As far as the ludonarrative dissonance, I kind of agree with you. I don't think that there is it fundamentally mandates that dissonance exists, except in the rarest of forms. I think there are times where the two work together very well, and I think when you do have the dissonance, that asks some interesting questions. At the end of the day, I understand how your friend doesn't like the term, but the mere fact that we are starting to come up with these terms means we're finally moving into that type of discussion. I think there is stuff that comes out of classic, especially continental critical theory, like Baudrillard, like Barthes, I'm blanking, Julia Kristeva, that does become quite applicable, and when you do apply it, it forces what the new questions have to be and where the new language and the new terminology. My dream, if there's anybody out there who's at some university and is looking to put together a program that is not teaching people how to make games, but it's teaching people how to read games while they're playing it, I am so into this idea, and I would love to do that. But
I think what's the thing that Ken Levine was saying about, like, someone asked him about ludonarrative dissonance and how in a shooter, when you shoot like literally hundreds of people, it kind of doesn't necessarily fit with 99% of game protagonists. The way that Ken Levine described it or explained it away or whatever was by saying that that it's like in a musical when characters burst into song for no reason, and how that would never happen in real life, but you ignore it because it's the nature of the format.
Yeah. His
explanation for games like BioShock Infinite or Tomb Raider, where you're killing literally 700 or 800 people over the course of the story, is that that's just the nature of the format. Like, I don't know if that is a good explanation. I don't know if that fixes it, but I think that's an interesting way of looking at it, at least, that it's just like
a good way of contextualizing it. I think that, it's if you go back to sort of Elizabethan drama, if you also go back to just kind of opera forms, there's a clear style. If you go back to Elizabethan drama, it's a 5-act structure. You're always going to have that. There are certain things that there's almost like a rhythm. It's almost what modern day soap operas are, that there's a certain rhythm that it adheres to, and you get that in musicals. And sometimes you play with it 100%, sometimes you play against it. But yeah, I think the ludonarrative dissonance argument is a little bit too heavy-handed in what games are supposed to be, and that there is value in the form, in the very traditional forms that it tells, but also by recognizing that and experimenting with it, you can start to progress and evolve it. I think a lot of the games are all ruined because of violent thing that emerged in the past month has some merit in an interesting discussion, but I think it's also like the pendulum swinging about as far in the other direction as it can possibly go. Gina, that was great. I think we now have some interesting things to talk about here. So please hang around, but let's move on to Mikhail.
All right, here's Mikhail.
Hey, Mikhail. Ooh, Mikhail, get that mic on. Get that mic on, Mikhail.
Make sure you unmute yourself. There's a little mic in the upper corner up there in the upper right.
Upper right, see the mic? Just mute. Kyle, I think we may need to...
We'll come back to him.
All right, let's try out... Actually, you know what, first, are there any commenters out there? Did our discussion with Gita inspire anybody?
Not specifically about what we were talking about, but this has more to do with the conversation about, I guess, like used games and downloadable games and where things are going. Andrew Redwine asks, since Blood Dragon came out today, I was wondering what you guys think of the idea of downloadable spin-offs of AAA games. So specifically the idea of taking a AAA game engine like Far Cry 3 and making a smaller experience with it that you can play completely by itself.
It's an awesome idea. It's an economically very sound idea. Obviously, Far Cry 3 was a rather popular game, but you know, sometimes you might have a game that might be sort of a critical success, doesn't find an audience. You can do one of these DLCs that is shorter, but it uses pretty much the existing technology and do something completely different with it, and maybe find a new audience. It's really kind of what was the Arma mod that everyone loved, the zombie one?
DayZ?
Yeah, DayZ. Sorry, my now you're starting to see my fatigue.
Well, there's a million zombie games with identical sounding names, so that's not really your fault.
In the core game by kind of doing different ways, and allows for experimentation, and you get something as ridiculously silly as Blood Dragon. Hopefully, this does really well, and it'll kind of inspire some other publishers to kind of take chances like that. I think it's a great thing. All right, let's give Sam a quick check.
All right, Sam.
Sam, are you there?
Hello?
Hello, Sam. Where are you hailing from?
I am hailing from Seattle, Washington.
Oh, that's so far away.
Oh,
yeah. You get guys from Mexico and from England, but Seattle.
Dude, that's a Sig Majora's Mask poster you have behind you.
Oh, yeah. That's actually, I remember I got that back when I had got Majora's Mask when I was, God, what was I, like 10 or something? Like, I got a player's manual with it, and it had that poster in there. And
it's a strategy guide one.
Yeah, it's a strategy guide one. And then it was like, I found it when I was like digging through like my old closet, and I was just like going, oh, I got to bring this and set it up in the, you know, because it's just...
Everything Majora's Mask has a kind of a rarefied quality to it. Yeah, I think because Ocarina has became such the seminal game. Yeah, I've seen this transition where like a certain faction seems, you know, once they're got Majora's is actually the superior game.
Well, I mean, I'd always kind of been in that camp when, even when the game originally came out, and I was pretty young when it still came out, you know, of like.
Said you were 10.
Yeah, something like that.
I was in my later 20s. I'm just going to throw that at you there.
Anyway, I'm sorry. But it was like, even when I was that age, like I noticed there was something really, really, really different about it in comparison to Ocarina of Time. And it's funny because in thinking about it, it even sort of like reminds me in a way of like how I view like Majora's Mask versus Ocarina of Time in the way that I viewed like you know, recently BioShock Infinite versus the original BioShock in terms of like how it does like storytelling and, you know, different mechanics like that. And I kind of like had been getting a discussion with a couple friends, especially when Infinite came out, because everybody was talking about it because it's...
But no, I like that. Yeah, I think you have a very fair analogy between those two games. And
and I would, like the way that I kind of describe it is that I always had really, I wouldn't say big issues with Ocarina of Time. Like, I loved it. It was great and everything, but I was never really that into it. Like, it's kind of like I started, I went to the end, and the one thing that was just kind of like whatever about it was that you were pretty much being told by everybody, you are the hero of time. You have to get to the end. You have to say that, you know, everybody was like telling you to do these things. In comparison to like Majora's Mask, where it's like Link just kind of like goes there, and, you know, the only thing he's really told is that you need to get the mask back from the Skull Kid because he stole it, blah, 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 blah. And as you go through the game, you start to interact and see like all the people in, I think it was Termina was the name of the place that, the world that was in. It was like you start to see like these people and how they're reacting to the moon slowly falling down and like all their problems, and it becomes much more this thing where it's like you can almost see like from Link's point of view, he's kind of staying there to save it on his own kind of desire, because nobody ever acknowledges him what he's doing. He's just kind of there, and he just doesn't want to see these people, you know, come to their doom and kind of give them a second chance and, you know, solve their problems. So in that kind of sense...
It's a far more articulated game. I really like the way you're describing it. Ocarina, and I think you're quite brave for saying what you just said, I've always found Ocarina to be oddly cold. You know, and I think what you kind of pointed out, I never saw it this way, is that Ocarina is such the grand narrative, something that we're kind of familiar with from so many, this is a very traditional story. And then Majora's Mask is something a little bit more articulated. It's a little more sort of interesting and offbeat. But I think the big conundrum is I don't think you could have had Majora's Mask without Ocarina preceding.
Right, exactly.
Have the grand story and then do something and sort of play with it afterwards.
Right, and it's like
Far Cry 3 and Blood Dragon.
Yeah, well, yeah, because I mean, well, the thing that was good about Majora's Mask is they already had a game engine. They already had all that stuff set up. They could spend their time, focusing on, making this world and really kind of, putting their power and, just time into the actual art of it.
Yeah,
so,
and I also think the success of Ocarina of Time and, like you said, the engine kind of freed them up to get really weird with it and like gave them a lot of freedom. It's kind of like how Gore Verbinski uses his very mainstream Pirates of the Caribbean movies to fund his weird little side passion projects like Ringo and stuff like that. Yeah. They gave themselves that opportunity. They kind of earned that opportunity by
Bioshock movie.
God, I wish he would do that. I wish that would actually happen.
But yeah, no, and it's like, and the reason why I kind of brought Bioshock Infinite in comparison to Bioshock was it's just, Infinite sort of follows that same thing where it's like, in Bioshock, you were basically told by Atlas, you need to go do this thing, because if not, I'll, lose, I think it was like you had to save his, family or something. Like, it was, I haven't played it.
I remember that,
Yeah, exactly, but it was just kind of being told, and it's like, oh, okay, and the only thing that really kept me going was just that, Rapture was such an interesting place, and, so nice to look at, and just, had a lot of intrigue. The thing that I found really compelling about Infinite is that, Booker goes there, he's there to, take the girl back to New York, and throughout the whole thing, he's very much like, yeah, I don't really care what's going on, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of start to see, how the, oh God, I can't remember the name of the city in Infinite now. I feel really bad.
Columbia.
God, I was just like, oh Jesus, I just played this. But it's like in Columbia, you kind of get that same effect where it's like Booker and kind of it's almost actually sort of like an opposite thing where Booker has no intention to be part of it, but you're kind of compelled by Elizabeth to do these things. Who's understanding these issues that's going on in Columbia. Like I remember the one where it's like, she made the comment about how come there's restrooms for people of color and the Irish, and there's restrooms for she made that comment, and it's like she never really said you need to, she was kind of like the voice in the rest of us who was understanding that something was wrong with this place, whereas Booker was much more just didn't really care and was kind of there. But I feel like that was a much more interesting way of kind of conveying that feeling than the way Bioshock did it, which was sort of the way Ocarina of Time did it. Yeah,
the original Bioshock definitely walked in the tradition of the original Half-Life.
Yeah.
Where it's just that very singular viewpoint of everything. And what you get in Infinite is you do get this alternate viewpoint, not just to your actions, but to the world around you. And it does allow for a little bit more of a discourse, even within the game, about things that are happening. I absolutely agree. This is good. We're having smarty pants discussions. And remember when I said I was all tired, I was going to start drooling and babbling out the mouth? You guys are keeping me from doing that, and I really appreciate it. Yes, Nick?
Speaking of smarty pants discussions, we've got a dude named Josh Marsfelder who commented on our Google Plus that said he actually does critical theory on video games. It's a big area of interest for him, and he wanted to know if you're familiar with something called the Journal of Game Studies. It's gamestudies.org. He says, this sort of research seems like what Adam was hoping for, and I agree. Examining games for their cultural capital is very much the direction I'd like to see the general discourse go in.
Yeah, I have heard about it. I've completely forgotten about it, and I love the fact that you just reminded me, because that's what I'll probably be doing. Actually, I was having fun when I was traveling. I was reading a book called Better Off Dead, and it's a bunch of critical studies of zombies. And you're both dealing with their history. And what's neat is they really kind of saw the zombie as this intersection, both of narrative and its discussion of horror, but also biology and certain sociologies. And that all of those issues can kind of, it's all about the post-human and sort of all those anxieties that we have about it. And yeah, it was getting me very, very hungry again to just, read a bunch of German people using words that I try to use in common parlance. Everyone just laughs at me. So, hey, Sam, thank you so much. Hang around. We may be clearing you guys out to bring in a new group, but thank you so much for the discussion. Nick, let's see if we can get Scott V in here.
All right, here's Scott V. Hey, Scott.
How's it going, Adam?
Going
you hear
well.
me?
Yep, I gotcha. Where are you coming in from?
Arlington, Washington.
Okay, cool. Washington State.
Yeah.
Do you know Sam? I'm just going to make that assumption all people in Washington know each other.
Everyone knows Sam.
Sam is notorious? Is that what you're saying?
He's walking around greeting
All
everybody in
people know
Washington
Sam.
State. So, yeah, what's on your mind?
So over the past couple of years, I've read a ton of articles, most of them written by MBAs, a lot of them on Forbes magazine, but on other sites too, predicting the demise of console gaming, in part because of smartphone and tablet gaming. These writers, they write as though the gamers are only motivated by price. So if they have the choice between a game that costs $60 and a game that costs 99 cents, they'll choose the cheaper game.
Yeah. I know exactly where you're going with this.
Do you think that these are totally independent phenomena? I mean, certainly console games and console game sales have declined in the last couple of years, and smartphone gaming is increasing. But are these connected? I mean, do you think they're connected just based on sales alone?
I think there's a little interplay, but I know it's kind of like that Mark Twain quote: "Rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated." It's a little extremist. I think it's like an aspect, especially of the business press. And I'm not saying these guys don't really understand the game industry at all, but are trying to apply very normal market readings to something that is different. Because games, yes, they're products, but there's a lot of brand fidelity, there's a lot of passion around it. And so let's address the first thing, the softening sales of consoles and games. The softening sales of consoles kind of makes sense. There's new consoles coming out. And so people are like, well, maybe I'll hold off and wait for that. Also, you can't expect that console sales are going to grow year to year. At some point, it's going to hit a saturation, and it's going to start to trail off. It'll be stimulated by price cuts, but that seems to be a very normal thing. We've never had one generation of consoles on the market for this long. Now, the softening of the game sales, I think, is interesting. I think that's more of an impact of what's happened with the economy, that people don't feel they have as much cash that they can throw around, and they're becoming a lot more cautious about what they're going to buy. And that's happening at exactly the same time that the game publishers are worried about how much money they're spending on their games, and they're very cautious about doing anything new or different for fear that they're not going to see a return on it. Those two things don't work so well together, and I think what looks like the very strong sales from BioShock Infinite are kind of really can shine a light that if you try to do something new, if you try to do something different and fresh, people will gravitate towards it, and you really will have an event. In terms of like the tablets taking away the consoles, no, you play them in two different ways. They offer two different games. And even when we're going to start to see more sophisticated tablet games, they are still going to be a very distinct experience than sitting down on your couch when you've told yourself, I have now decided that for the next 4, maybe 6 hours, this is what I'm committing myself to. Nobody does that with a tablet game over the age of 10. Because it doesn't. They really are two different forms of interaction and two different types of experiences. I don't know why there is such an attachment to that narrative that it has to be an either or. I think they become very complementary. I think we're going to start to see a lot of these second screen experiences where they're going to interplay. I think the best thing that can happen is if you have a strong brand. And this could very well be happening with something like Destiny coming from Bungie, that you have that core game, but there's still some way to interact with it with a mobile device. And that way you're kind of helping the brand fidelity. It is a little bit sad that these people who are viewing the market don't understand that there's ways to co-opt what could be the threat rather than to just let it be a threat. Having said that, I mean, the one thing that is undeniable, a success, which is very rare, but a success that happens in a mobile game, your profit margins are astronomical, as they can be very, very narrow, even with like tens of millions of copies sold of a console game.
Oh yeah, because of all the smartphones that are out there.
An example of that. So, yeah, I mean, do you just read that, or do people come to you, like kind of going like, "Hey, I heard that console thing you like so much there is it's going to go away, Scott, because we have these tablets now."
I've read this so many times over the past couple of years. The articles usually appear in Forbes magazine, but they may, and it's hard for me to believe that people would, stop or stop playing games like Skyrim and Alan Wake and play these, like whack-a-mole games, and
Yeah, or Fruit
they're
Ninja.
just kind of a regression to the coin-operated games of the 1980s.
And also, I think some people play some of these games a lot. The only thing that I think is tracked a lot right now is who's buying the game. Purchasing these games is really easy. I hit a few buttons, boom, I have it. How long are people continuing their relationship with the game? And that, if we have better data on that, that could help illuminate a little bit more. And I think that you're making snap judgments in your purchases. I think this story will change significantly once the new consoles are out, and we can start to see sort of the enthusiasm, the interest that goes around that. If the software for these consoles sucks, then we may have an entirely different story. So thank you.
To your point, Adam, Phantom Crash 4545 in the YouTube chat says that he has not found a smartphone game interesting yet at all. Like, he's never found one that hooked him the way a traditional game would.
You know what? There's something I was playing. We were able to get it a little bit early because it accidentally went on the Apple Store too early. But for access, the makers of Civilization have kind of a fun strategy game that I was playing on an iPad called Haunted Hollow. It comes out tomorrow. Yes, it's nowhere near the level of complexity of something like Civ, but it still has that kind of Firaxis feel to it, and it's about monsters, and you're trying to scare people. And that was the first time I had a game where I was like, I could probably happily distract myself on this for longer than 5 minutes. So I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, let's see if we can throw in Tyler here. And get some.
All right, here's Tyler. Here we go.
Tyler,
Hello.
how are you?
Can you hear me? I'm
Yes,
well.
I
I'm
can.
well. I hope you're well.
I don't know if I'm well. I'm probably
Tired.
able to mind, if not the body. Where are you joining us from?
I'm from Austin.
Oh, cool. I was just out in Austin.
Yeah. I tried to.
I've been heading out there a lot. It's supposed to be warm
When are
out
we
there.
gonna
That
be
is yet
able-
to happen when I'm there.
No, it's not real. It's a good day today. It's a good day today, but it's
Okay.
it's a little crazy generally.
Yeah, that has
When
that
are we
has
gonna
weather
be able
about
to?
Go on.
When are we going to be able to figure out, or when are you going to tell us whatever you were working on, the movie?
Somebody else has to kind of give me the go-ahead. They might have a marketing plan that they, Okay, how many people who have done, like actors who have done voices for games, have gone on a talk show and completely scuttlebutted the marketing strategy for that game? And I'm so cognizant of that I'm trying to play ball. Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than later, but trust me, the minute I can open up my yapper, I will. So,
Okay, good.
So what's on your mind game-wise, Tyler?
Nintendo and the indie market. Both of those things. And so I've got like one question that's kind of going to lead into another question. So Nintendo, everybody knows Nintendo is, I don't know, they're in a rough spot right now.
Yeah.
Having a few issues. And a lot of people think maybe they should do what Sega did and kind of sell out in a way, just kind of exit the console market, the home console market, I should say, and start selling their property. I wouldn't mind playing a Zelda game on the PlayStation.
I wouldn't mind playing a Mario game on my iPad. So,
right? Yeah. So with problems like not like Nintendo is having, then EA is having some significant problems. Maybe not financially, but within themselves.
they have some tight purse strings. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And THQ, they're no longer THQ. With all of this happening in the AAA market, might we see over the course of the next 5 years indie gamers, either through success or like joining of the companies, start to take place of the THQs and Capcoms maybe? What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's kind of similar to what we were just talking about, like, will tablets take away consoles? I don't think... I think there's a coexistence. I think indie games are doing a lot to satisfy people's interest when, say like the Gears of War that just came out or the God of War that just came out. They're fine games, but they're not really stuff that you can rally around. You just kind of play them. I think a lot of people who are hungry for something new and interesting are definitely going to the indie market. I think the publishers are becoming increasingly aware of that, and you might see more publisher support of indie titles coming further down the line. be it helping in distribution and marketing. Those aspects were just still a great challenge for indie games, getting the word out and finding that audience. I mean, because anyone who's ever been to the App Store knows anything on that games list is no indication if they're good or not. It's just, a lot of people have gone, I'm going to buy that. And I think also what's happening with indie games is going to more and more inform game development on the AAA titles. I think that with these, with the problems that EA is experiencing, and a lot of that is they had too many games, they're putting them out there with very poor marketing, and they just didn't, they weren't getting any traction. THQ just was in a financial hole. Nintendo Problem is really, they have a piece of hardware that's confusing the greater populace, and for the hardcore gamers, there's just very little that that you want to play on that. I think that they need to solve their problem by finally getting software out. I think EA is the most relevant to what you're saying. That how do you make games that are going to find an audience and can make a return on the very, very high costs of what it is to develop them. I think maybe we're going to start to see fewer and fewer bad games, and hopefully the games that do come out are going to be of a higher quality. They're going to be a lot richer. I think the market will start to force that, and if there are publishers out there that really don't see that for what it is, I think that they too are going to find themselves into some very difficult positions. I think my biggest worry is I wouldn't be surprised if a couple more publishers either merge or something like that, but we're not going to see new publishers get out on the marketplace. There needs to be more competition. I think that's one of the biggest issues I've seen. Hey, Sam, are you
well, I kind of thought, because this sort of had a question discussion that I've been talking with in relation to publishers, because what I'm starting to see a lot more now is a lot of, I know people talk about Kickstarter like it's this big, thing, but the whole idea of like the crowdsourcing almost follows it very closely to how the music industry has been going for a while, which I do music, so I'm a little more well-versed in that, but it's become this thing where it's like artists, bands, whatever, production companies, anything like that, they've been going away from the idea of having a label backing them, especially now more so because they can get, funding directly from their audience, like a crowdsourcing, that's what the term is. They can get it from that. And it's like, I'm wondering, like, what roles are publishers going to be I want your thoughts on this. What roles are publishers going to be having in, the next coming years, I suppose, as that starts to become more apparent? Because it kind of seems like the same thing where a lot of developers are getting kind of tired of having to be involved with publishers, especially when it comes to, creative differences or how something is released, different things like that. And do you think that there's a possibility that publishers are going to start losing power, and it's going to be much more of that idea where people start funding projects that they want to see based on, kind of like what the, developers trying to sell to, their clientele, I guess you could say.
It's an interesting question. I think it definitely relates to what Tyler was saying. Well, I don't know if this sort of, the developer getting to call their own shots through Kickstarter. I hope this works out well. I think it is fraught with a lot of peril and a couple of missteps from people that have received crowdfunded games, money for crowdfunded games. I think that could really cause some skepticism and hesitancy on people's parts to actually be getting money down the line. I think what hopefully will happen is a changing of the developer-publisher relationship. I think publishers are important. I think that they need to be there, and sometimes developers need some degree of discipline to ensure that things are being done efficiently, cost-effectively, and in a timely fashion. That if you, as it was said when United Artists was started by Charlie Chaplin, I can't remember who else, that these creatives were taking over studio. It was called that the inmates were running the asylum. They did do quite well for themselves, I have to say, but there are problems there, and it has to be a fixed relationship. Having said that, with this report that EA Labels, or EA Partners, I'm sorry, is going to be shut down, and we've all been reading that out there. I have sources of my own that have also been telling me this. That was kind of the closest you could find to people that wanted to have some degree of independence, but they did want to be using a publisher. If that's going to go away, that could be a sign that there are increasing trends like this. But then again, it could just be an anomaly because EA seems to be making decisions in a vacuum right now. So, hey, Tyler, I know you had a second thing. What were you thinking?
Well, Okay, so Nintendo's the Wii U isn't doing so well. Like you said, it's a little confusing. Now with the PlayStation 4, I don't own a PS Vita yet, but I'm getting a PS Vita at the same time I get a PS4 because I do expect Sony to
prepared to
deliver
spend a lot of money if you're going to do that. I'm just warning you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you're going to want some games as well.
Yeah. So with if Sony can deliver like truly whole integration of the PlayStation Vita with the PlayStation 4, is that gonna, other than the hardcore market, is that gonna hurt the Wii U even greater? Because I mean, I know the Wii U is there's the hardcore fans, and then there's also like the parents who want those kid-friendly games. Well, Sony's delivering that with their support of the indie market.
Well, and also they had. I'm not saying these are good games, but there's Sorcery, or whatever it was called. There's a J.K. Rowling, the book turns into something game. I have no idea what that was. That very strange sequence that happened in the course of Sony's press conference at E3 last year. That's it. I don't think the Vita is going to be the huge challenge to the Wii. Obviously, what the Vita will allow, or at least they're saying, is that you're going to be able to play some, if not all, of the games, both on your PS4 or on your Vita. I think that's like, and a lot of people are going to be angry, like backwards compatibility. It's something that sounds like very, very important before the console comes out, and within a year is just not really a big selling point. I never understood the appeal of being able to play my game off the TV and on my Wii Pad. I don't need to be playing games all that much. Sometimes when you go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. You don't need to. It's like, I gotta take my game. That indicates you might be having a problem with your pastime. I'm just throwing that out there, guys. Give it a consideration. I don't think that. I don't know how heavy they're going to present that. Now, if they do plan on using the Vita, once again, as a second screen, where it could be affecting the game that's playing up on the TV. That could be interesting. Yeah. I think what Sony's doing, and very wisely so, they're ensuring that developers could have these opportunities with myriad things that are available, with the streaming Gaikai technology, but they're not mandating that it happens with every single game. Those were some of the mistakes they made with Move. Those were mistakes they made in the beginning with the 6-axis. I think these are just opportunities out there that the developers are allowed to consider and play with, but I don't know how much we're going to see that as a core selling point. I think right now.
Well, I mean, this.
Oh yeah, go on.
Yeah, well, the second screen stuff seems totally feasible, but do you think that like the cross-buy stuff will still be a thing on PS4? Because the PS3 and the Vita are roughly equivalent in power, right? Like sort of. But if the PS4 is a generational leap and is 7 or 8 years ahead of what the PS3 could do, it's hard to imagine how PS4 games would actually be even remotely playable on a Vita.
But once again, it could be asynchronous gameplay. Something like that doesn't require, there's reasons why it's, maybe sports games, some sports games can work that way.
Yeah.
To me, it sounds technologically unfeasible unless, once again, it goes back to the streaming. And so you're both kind of playing off the cloud and you want to play with that. I mean, that's the thing. When you really, there's opportunities in all of this. I just hope it does not become something every game has to incorporate, because we've seen how that goes, be it motion control or motion control. Or motion control. So,
exactly.
But yeah, hey Nick, do we have another comment out there in the chatosphere?
We have a bunch. Let's see. Nico Kuhn says, that's not me, I promise. Nico Kuhn says, the new consoles don't really offer anything new, in my opinion. The only thing about the near future of gaming that's exciting to me is the possibility of the Oculus Rift. That's something I actually can't wait for. Yeah. What do you think about that? Like, our new Scott Bromley's lingering me right now.
Yeah, you'll be. Look, the thing is, we don't know much about the new consoles. Sony showed a little bit, but not a ton. We don't know anything about Microsoft's officially. Yes, we have the Wii U out, and we're not terribly impressed, but I don't think we were looking to be that impressed from the get-go. It just needs Nintendo games. So I'm not sort of. I think that's just becoming kind of a common sort of like contrarian way of looking at things, to say, oh, these new things are bad. Oculus Rift is really cool. I like those guys so much. It's really cool to check it out. I also think it's deeply impractical. And I do want to see games that are designed directly for it, but that's not going to make it into a ton of homes very, very quickly. I just don't. it's something I would love to see experimented with and maybe slowly integrated. But one thing you're doing is you're pretty much, it's sensory deprivation, and they're just, from an insurance standpoint, there are certain problems I see with that it may encounter as it kind of slowly gets itself ready and goes to market. I'm excited about the new consoles. I think if they won't offer anything new in terms of the hardware, except that it's more powerful, I think at the very least we have an opportunity for developers to try to make new IPs, new games, and something that's a little bit more experimental. Anything else out there, Nick?
Yeah. Jaden Crow 85 says, has the Sess heard about the Colonial Marines class action lawsuit? What are his thoughts on it?
Yes, I have. It's interesting. My wife is an attorney, and so when things like this happen, it's so nice to be married to her. She thinks it's quite interesting, and there might be some. I don't think it's a BS case. I also don't think it's going to go to trial. It's probably going to get settled. I think, especially due to the fact that because of the advertising regulations that happen in the UK that are far more stringent than what you get here in the US, they've already been called out on showing things from the game that were not really in the game. They pretty much admitted it. So that puts them, that makes your defense a little bit challenging.
They cited Randy Pitchford's tweet, right?
Yeah. There was a tweet, and there was some stuff that happened with the British Advertising Authority. Having said that, there are aspects of the things that granted, this happens with all lawsuits. Go back to the Infinity Ward Activision, you can just see some of the biggest hyperbole I've ever seen. But the way in which it kind of integrated the press into it was a little bizarre and distressing. One of the key ones was that there was something so odious about the fact that the embargo for the game lifted the day of release. That's actually a very common practice, even for good games. Also, the kind of, the press representing it, obviously we were seeing the same thing that everyone else was, and so that's kind of a flat line. I don't know, the way that the press is sort of a third angle of conveying stuff about the game. I guess that always, anything that might sort of put us into a courtroom never sounds fun, and I just highly admonish all of you, try to stay out of a courtroom. Nothing good ever comes out of it, even if you win your case. So I'm interested to see where it goes, but I think it's founded in something legitimate, and it could, I warn everyone, it could have a chilling effect if this thing becomes a big deal in terms of how any game company is going to think about showing demos to us in the press, what they're going to be putting in their trailers. Remember the era where we didn't see gameplay in the trailers? It was all live action? We could see a reversion back to that if there's always the thought that there's some kind of potential legal threat that's standing out there. And because lawyers, especially in-house counsel, I experienced this when I was at G4, and I know this happens at game companies, they are always going to be more conservative. Even if there's a rational reason to do something a certain way, their job is to ensure that you are as least exposed to legal action as possible. And it could be something that while everyone might be on the bandwagon like, hey, we're going to get them over there at Gearbox and Sega, it could have ramifications that will happen across the board with all game publishers. So I know that the internet mobs and how they like to think, but this one, while interesting, has me a little bit concerned.
Gotcha. Right. Do we have time for one more?
I think we have time for one more.
Cool. So this kind of goes back to the Ludonarrative, Dissonance, Bioshock Infinite conversation. Barry Kelly says, I think it's bad in general that anyone explains away their game's gameplay as if it's there just to fill a checkbox for the medium. So I think he's referring specifically
to the musical analogy, or
yeah, I think so. So.
No, also I said that it follows certain tropes, and no, those aren't checkboxes. That's kind of a style. I mean, you see that with sonnets. You see that obviously with haiku. That sometimes if there's a tradition that you work within, that restriction does create a lot of creative opportunities, more so than, hey, do whatever you want to do. That can be a little bit paralyzing in terms of it. I mean, we have genres, and you can see those genres is kind of equivalent to what epic poetry was, what sonnets were, what Greek tragedy, the structure of that. Those are all very important things that inform art later down the line. It's not that they are obliged by some outside force to create the game to just appeal to some committee that says that is now a shooter or that. I don't want to be misinterpreted that way. I think that's why I like the musical analogy, because it really does you get to look at sort of that game and other games of its ilk from a different perspective. That is something that we've come to expect as something of a rhythm, and BioShock Infinite still breaks that rhythm, and I think that's where we're most reactive to. So there you have it, Nick.
Cool, thank you. Now I know.
All right, guys. And remember, knowing is half the battle. The other half of the battle is shooting people in the face. They don't talk about that as much.
That's actually probably 95% of the battle,
which is the knowing part. So I just thought, if you're in battle, you should know, but you should also shoot in the face. So those are my words of wisdom as as my brainstem is just withering from just fatigue and being up for way too long yesterday. Guys, on that note, I'm probably going to have to go so I can preserve my voice because we're taping another Spoiled Games tomorrow. I would like to thank all of you. I know we didn't get to a crowd of people, but this was such a fun group right here. I wanted to see what we could do with the conversation. But we're going to do this again in 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get a special guest. We're going to talk back here and see if we can come up with a topic. Feel free to submit your own ideas of what might be a fun topic for all of us to discuss. We're always happy to solicit ideas. Because while we're kind of smart here, we have our days as well. All right? Guys, thank you so much. This has been Address the Sess. I'm Adam Sessler. Make sure you check out some other cool stuff that's going to be popping up on Red 3 Games this week. But I'll see you in 2. All right. Bye-bye.